Hello guys, close your eyes and imagine a world far beneath the surface of the earth. The air around you is cool and still, lit only by the weak glow of a distant lamp. We're about to journey together into that darkness, into the quiet tunnels and secret caverns of the Middle Ages. It's a slow, gentle journey, the kind that you might just fall asleep to, as the ancient past softly unfolds around you like a dream. Before we begin in earnest, I want to say, if you find comfort in these quiet journeys through the past, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Also, I'd love for you to share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's always so interesting to see how far and wide these quiet moments reach. Thank you. And now let's step back in time. Imagine it's very early morning, long ago. The year doesn't matter. Perhaps it's the late 1300s, maybe a cold spring dawn in the 1400s. In a small valley on the edge of a dense forest, under a sky still pricked by the last stars of night, a lone miner is waking from sleep. He rises in darkness, long before the sun, while the rest of the village still slumbers. In a cramped wooden hut that he calls home, the air is chill and carries the faint smell of yesterday's smoke. There is no chimney in this humble dwelling. The peat embers on the hearth have smoldered all night, filling the room with a thin haze. He coughs softly as he stirs, his breath visible in the frosty air. Nearby, on a straw-filled palliasse that he shares with his family, his wife and children burrow under the blankets as he quietly prepares for the long day ahead. He pulls on his work clothes, a coarse woolen tunic, patched in several places and still damp from the previous day's sweat. It was once a richer color, perhaps russet or blue, but now it's stained gray-brown with ground and grime. In places, the fabric is discolored by mineral pigments that will never wash out, rusty reds from iron-rich earth, and green streaks from copper ore. Over his tunic, he ties a cracked leather belt. From it hang a cloth pouch and a small sheath holding a short-bladed knife. He grabs his cap from a peg on the wall, a soft hat of felted wool that he can pull low to catch the drip of water in the mine shafts. He also dons a heavier wool cloak against the pre-dawn cold outside. His boots are sturdy, but worn leather, still caked with mud and rock dust from yesterday's trudge. They aren't new. In fact, one boot he cut down and re-stitched from a larger cast-off pair to fit his foot, a common trick to save money. Working people often repurpose old items. Archaeologists have even found a child's boot from a mining site that was cleverly cut down from an adult's shoe. In the dim light of the hut, he gathers his tools, an iron-headed pickaxe with a smooth wooden haft, a hammer and several steel chisels for cutting into rock, and a few wooden wedges. These he places in a rough hide sling. There is also a shovel, its blade carved from solid oak, and probably tipped with an iron strip across the edge, a simple but effective tool for heaving broken ore. He hefts it and the other implements, careful not to wake the children as he slips out the creaking door. Outside, the world is silent and silvered with frost. The grass crunches under his wooden clogs. He wears clogs over his boots sometimes for the walk as he begins his journey to the mine. Stars still glitter overhead, and a waning moon lends a faint glow to the narrow dirt path. He knows the way by heart. A pale ribbon of dawn is just beginning to touch the eastern sky, but it will be some time before full light. As he walks, his breath puffs in little clouds. It's a couple of miles from his cottage to the mine head, a distance he and many others cover every day on foot. Some miners live in shacks right by the mine, but many rent small plots and huts a bit farther off, so each day begins with this lonely trek through fields and woods. Our miner is not truly alone for long. As he reaches the main road, he can make out a few other dark figures ahead and behind, other miners trudging along with tools on their backs. No one speaks at this hour. Maybe a brief nod or a low grunt of greeting as they fall into step, but mostly there is quiet. Many miners begin their day with a prayer murmured under their breath, a habit born of necessity and fear. Listen closely, and you might hear one whispering a paternoster or an invocation to Saint Barbara, the patroness of miners, asking for protection in the dark passages to come. Saint Barbara is revered here. She was a martyr long ago, and miners believe she watches over them, guarding against sudden death by rockfall or explosion. In some mining communities, December 4th, St. Barbara's Day is celebrated with prayers and camaraderie. Today, as always, our miner quietly crosses himself and breathes a plea, St. Barbara, keep us safe. Some also pray to St. Anne, Mother of Mary, whom certain miner guilds honor as well. And then there's St. Clement for metalworkers and Kinga for salt miners. But Barbara remains foremost in their minds as they step into the pre-dawn gloom. With calloused fingers, the miner touches a little wooden cross tied on a cord around his neck, a humble talisman he carries every day. By the time he reaches the mine site, dawn is only a gray hint on the horizon. The pithead comes into view, a clearing at the forest's edge, where several shacks, piles of timber, and the wooden headframe of the main shaft stand outlined against the dim sky. A few sleepy figures are already moving about. A low building serves as a tool shed and workshop. Thin smoke rises from its chimney, indicating the blacksmith is awake and tending the forge. There's always some tool in need of mending. Near the main shaft, the foreman, a burly man with a wax tablet in hand, is checking off names as the miners arrive. Beside him is a simple hand-operated windlass, a wooden spool with a long rope coiled around it, used for hoisting loads up the shaft. Our miner pauses at a fire pit where a couple of women are ladling out hot porridge. These women are wives or older daughters of miners, earning a few coins by preparing a basic breakfast for the crew. He gratefully accepts a bowl of warm barley gruel, swallowing it quickly. It's plain and a bit smoky tasting, but it fills his belly and wards off the chill. All around, other miners shuffle in, rubbing their hands, adjusting their belts, quietly preparing for the descent. The atmosphere is subdued. Some men look anxious or tired, others simply resigned. A bell clangs, just a small handbell, but its tinny peal cuts through the morning silence. It's the signal to gather at the shaft. Miners line up in small groups. They light their lamps, little iron lanterns, or simple open saucer lamps filled with tallow or oil. The flames sputter at first, then burn with a steady dim glow. A few men use torches of pine wood for extra light at the surface, but those will be extinguished before they go below. Open flame torches consume too much oxygen in the mines. The foreman mutters a brief customary prayer aloud, something like, "Holy Barbara and Holy Anne, keep these men from harm." Many of the miners whisper, "Amen." Each man then makes a move to descend. Some shafts have ladders, others have a primitive hoist for people. Here there is a ladder system, along with a bucket and windlass for materials. One by one, the miners mount the ladder rungs and begin the journey down into the earth. Our miner steps to the edge and peers down. The main shaft is a black abyss dropping straight into the ground. Moisture on the timber lining glistens in his lamplight. A damp, cool draught sighs up from below, carrying the sense of wet stone and smoke. He swings himself onto the ladder, essentially a series of wooden rungs fixed into the shaft wall, and starts climbing down. The ladder is slick. Water seeping through the rocks has slimed the wood with algae. He grips tightly. The descent is long, perhaps 30 or 40 meters, 100 plus feet. Every few yards, there is a small landing where one can rest, standing on a narrow beam, before continuing down the next section. Step by step he goes, arms straining, boots feeling for each rung. Above him, the square of pale dawn light grows smaller and fainter. The clamor of the surface fades, replaced by an eerie stillness, broken only by the creak of wood and the occasional cough or murmur of another climber. Drips of water from the shaft walls patter on his cloak and cap. One lands on his cheek. It's as cold as ice and carries a mineral tang. At length, he reaches the bottom of the shaft. He steps off the ladder onto solid ground, a plank platform damp with mud. A few other men are already there, their lamps casting bobbing halos of light in the dark. The transition is always a shock. Moments ago, it was becoming dawn above, but here underground, it is night unending. He takes a moment to catch his breath, and as more miners gather, they light additional small lamps set in niches on the walls. The space at the shaft bottom is an alcove carved out to form a sort of entry chamber. From it, several low tunnels branch off, each leading to different parts of the mine's workings. Wooden beams, rough-hewn from pine logs, support the ceilings at these tunnel mouths. The beams groan softly at times under the weight of rock above, a reminder that without them, the ground could collapse. The miners don't linger long at the shaft base. With brief instructions from the foreman, who has climbed down last, they split up into their working crews. 2 or 3 men head down each major tunnel, bound for the specific section of the load they are tasked with exploiting. Our miner and his assigned partner retrieve a handcart that was left down here, basically a wooden barrow, and begin trundling it into one of the passages. The wheels squeak on the uneven floor. This main gallery is tall enough to walk if one hunches a bit. The walls glisten with moisture. Little trickles of water run along the edges of the floor, collecting in puddles. Overhead, the ceiling is jagged in places and soot-stained from past fire setting, the practice of cracking rock with fire, which we'll see later. Nails have been driven into some timber posts, and on these nails, a few spare lamps are hung, their tiny flames illuminating the path. The light is weak, just a soft orange glow that reaches a few paces, so the men also carry their own lamps in one hand while pulling the cart with the other. As they move deeper, the daylight from the shaft is completely lost. They are in a world of darkness, broken only by the flicker of flame. The silence is profound but not total. One can hear the distant tap-tap of miners already at work in far-off drifts, and the constant drip of water. There is also a muffled backdrop of the mine's breathing, air moving through ventilation shafts or cracks, a faint sigh, or occasional odd noise from far within. Every now and then, a soft crack or knock echoes, the earth settling, or a timber shifting slightly. Miners have many legends about such sounds. Some say the knocks are caused by kobolds or knockers, mischievous little mine spirits who mimic the sounds of pickaxes. They believe these subterranean gnomes can be both friend and foe. Sometimes they lead a fortunate miner to rich ore by a series of helpful knocks. Other times they cause trouble by stealing tools or luring men astray in uncharted tunnels. Our miner, like most of his fellows, half believes in these beings. In the oppressive silence, the idea of invisible companions is oddly comforting. So when he hears a faint knocking that he cannot explain, perhaps just a rock shifting overhead, he chooses to think kindly of the knockers and offers a polite word to them. "All right, lads, we hear you," he might whisper with a wry smile, acknowledging the supposed spirits so as not to offend them. In truth, the sounds are likely just the earth itself making its stresses known. Miners well understand that many of those knocks signal the rock under strain, a warning that could precede a fall. But it suits their temperament to treat the warnings as friendly, almost playful signals from the mine's unseen guardians. After some minutes of walking, they reach their designated work face. It's a narrower side passage branching off from the gallery. Here, the vein of ore, primarily lead and silver ore in this mine, runs through the rock in a seam perhaps a foot thick. The miners had hewn this small tunnel following that seam. It's just about tall enough for a man on hands and knees. They set their cart down outside, and our miner crawls in with his lamp to take a look at the rock. The flickering light reveals the vein as a darker band against the dull gray stone, with sparkles of metallic mineral. He and his partner exchange a few quiet words, deciding where to attack the rock today. Then they begin. The sounds of the mine now swell from silence to activity. Clink, thunk. The miner swings his pick at the rock face, chipping away at the softer matrix around the ore. Each impact sends a spray of stone chips and raises hollow echoes in the confined tunnel. He works methodically, loosening lumps of ore-bearing rock. The air soon fills with rock dust. He pauses to wipe his brow. Even in the chill air, hard work brings sweat. The sweat mingles with fine dust on his skin, forming rivulets of mud that trickle down his neck. The thick smell of earth and metal grows stronger. He can actually smell the ore, a sort of acrid, bloody scent from the iron, and a tang from arsenic or other minerals. It clings to his clothes and skin. His partner wedges a chisel into a crack. The pick opened and strikes it with a sledgehammer. Bang, bang. A larger chunk of ore breaks free with a satisfying crack. They haul it out together, awkwardly shuffling the heavy lump out to the passage where the cart waits. Already their shoulders and backs ache from crouching and lifting. This is back-breaking work in the most literal sense. Many miners end their days stooped like crones from years of such posture. Hour after hour, the two miners labor. They fall into a rhythm, swinging hammers, driving iron wedges, prying out chunks of ore and loading them into the cart. Whenever the cart fills up with as much as they can drag, they tug it back toward the shaft to unload. This might be a long walk. Their drift is not too far today, but as mines expand, some work faces can be hundreds of meters from the shaft. Imagine dragging a creaky wooden cart piled with rock through a maze of dark tunnels lit only by a few flames. The miner's breath grows labored with the effort. His lamp sputters and nearly goes out once, when a stray draft of air, or perhaps a pocket of low oxygen damped air, flits by. He immediately stops, heart quickening. A flame dimming without reason is a dreaded sign. It means the air might be bad and could extinguish the light entirely, and a candle that dies on its own is a miner's urgent warning to flee. Fortunately, after a moment, the lamp's flame steadies again. He and his partner glance at each other. Both smelled something odd just then. A whiff of sulfur, maybe a hint of choke damp, carbon dioxide. They step back and decide to take a short break, letting the tunnel air out a bit. In some mines where ventilation is poor, the bad air, as they call these suffocating gases, can be deadly. Men caught in choke damp or black damp might simply fall unconscious and never reawaken. It's a constant worry. The wiser miners bring caged mice or birds with them. The small creatures will show distress at bad air before a man keels over. But not everyone has that resource. One of the new shafts here is particularly deep and ill-ventilated, and word around is that last month, 2 men nearly suffocated when their lamps went out. They were barely dragged to safety. That incident spurred some improvements. The mine owner ordered a ventilation machine installed, a hand-cranked fan that forces air down a shaft, after consulting a recent mining treatise about it. Agricola, a scholarly physician who wrote a great book De Re Metallica in 1556, described many ventilation methods, from simple canvas wind sails to powered fans. In our mine's case, a primitive fan with wooden blades has been set up at one shaft entrance, operated by a couple of boys. It's not very effective in the far corners of the workings, but it helps. When our miner felt that draft and saw his lamp fade, he mentally noted to tell the foreman later Perhaps they need to extend an air shaft closer or punch a small raise, a vertical opening, to connect to an upper tunnel for natural airflow. After a few minutes, the air in their drift feels fresher. They resume work. Stone by stone, cart by cart, they accumulate a heap of ore at the shaft bottom staging area. A team of surface laborers will periodically haul it up in big leather bags, using the windlass. Occasionally, the muffled shout of the bucketmen travels down the shaft. Hoist away, followed by the creak of the windlass and rope as a load is pulled up. Each time a loaded bucket ascends, loose pebbles and dust tend to rain down the shaft. The miners below step aside for a moment, pulling their hats low and listening warily to the rope's strain. They know that if a rope snaps, a heavy bag of ore could plummet like a deadly missile. There have been fatal accidents in various mines from falling loads. Here, fortunately, the rope and windlass are new this season, installed after an older one frayed. Still, they never stand directly under the shaft when a weight is in motion. Amid their toil, our miner's mind drifts from time to time. In the dimness, doing such repetitive work, one can almost forget where and what one is. He recalls bits of life on the surface, his wife's face in the morning as she handed him his satchel of lunch, some coarse bread and cheese wrapped in cloth, the sound of his youngest daughter coughing in her sleep. He worries about that cough. Many children in the damp mining settlement have weak lungs. He remembers that next week is St. Barbara's feast day. In past years, the Miners' Guild has organized a small observance, a short mass at the chapel, and maybe shared bread and ale afterwards. Those are rare moments of joy, the men emerging blinking from underground at midday, allowed a half day off to honor their patroness. They'd gather around a shrine to St. Barbara near the shaft entrance, decorating her statue with pine boughs and candles, giving thanks for a year of life. Then perhaps they'd drink beer together and sing a gentle song or two in her honor. Such reprieves are few, but they matter. He takes a quiet breath and carries on, bolstered by the thought that soon there may be a brief respite and a communal meal, something to look forward to in the perpetual cycle of work. Clang, crack. His partner has just driven a wedge that split off an especially large slab of ore. It crashes to the ground, narrowly missing the miner's foot. Both men grunt and strain to lever this heavy chunk into their cart. It will probably have to be broken up further later, but for now they get it to the shaft area intact. It might be rich. The miner sees glints of dull white metal, lead, and a bit of silver sprinkled in the broken face. That could mean a bonus in pay, or at least praise from the mine captain. He allows himself a small smile. Perhaps this will be a good day. Not long after, the foreman's distant shout echoes down the tunnels, a signal for a break. It must be mid-shift by now, though no sunlight has penetrated here to mark the time. The miners in various drifts cease their hammering. Our miner sits back against the cool wall of his gallery and finally rests. His muscles quiver from exertion. Dust covers his hair, making the dark strands appear gray. He pulls out a leather flask and takes a long drink of water. It's slightly brackish. It was filled from a mine sump, so it tastes of minerals, but wet enough. From his satchel, he retrieves a bit of that bread and cheese prepared by his wife. Taking off his grimy gloves, he eats slowly. The bread is hard and the cheese pungent. As he chews, his partner lights a small twist of dried sage and waves it gently, a trick to mask the mine odors for a moment with something fragrant. The whiff of herbal smoke reminds our miner of home. He and his partner chat quietly while they eat. In the enveloping darkness, sharing a lamp between them, these moments of human connection are precious. They talk of simple things, how many carts they filled so far today, whether the new rope on the windlass seems to be holding well, whether anyone's goat had birthed kids in the village. Fresh milk is a treat. They don't talk about the deeper fears. No need to invite those thoughts in right now. Everyone here knows the dangers, but voicing them might feel like tempting fate. Instead, they chuckle softly about a fellow worker who slipped in the mud that morning and ended up covered head to toe, arriving at the shaft looking like a creature from a swamp. Or they complain about the quality of the lamp oil. Some lamps are burning fish oil today, which gives a smoky, rancid light that stings the eyes. The thick tallow smoke from their lamps clings to the back of their throats and makes them cough. Many miners live with a perpetual cough, the miner's asthma they call it. It comes from inhaling rock dust and smoke day in, day out, and it never fully goes away. Our miner has a mild version of it. He tries to spit out the dust and take occasional deep breaths at the shaft where the air is better, but it's impossible not to breathe in the fine particles. He's noticed that some older men, those in their 40s and 50s who have survived this long, have constant rattling breaths and can barely climb the ladders without wheezing. Joint pains plague them too, knees, hips, shoulders, from the ceaseless strain. A miner's life is spent crawling, and his old age is spent crooked, one of the seniors once joked bitterly, rubbing his bent back. Our miner feels some of that ache already, especially on damp mornings. They say the work ages a man twice as fast as an ordinary trade. He believes it, but he also takes a certain pride in it. It's skilled labor, in its own way, and vital. Break time ends too quickly. With a sigh, he and his partner stow their water flasks and get back to it. They plan to set a fire in the rock now, a technique to weaken a stubborn section. This method, known as fire setting, is ancient and somewhat dangerous, but very effective against hard rock. They gather some dry wood, kept in a niche nearby for this purpose. Stacking the wood against the rock face they want to break, they light it with a scrap of burning oily rag. Soon, bright flames are licking the stone, painting the tunnel walls gold with their light. The temperature rises sharply. The miners retreat a few steps, shielding their faces. The fire roars for a while, heating the rock thoroughly. When the blaze has done its work, they grab a bucket of water kept at hand and splash, throw it onto the hot stone. Hiss, steam explodes and billows out, filling the drift like a ghostly white cloud. The sudden cooling causes the rock to crack with a series of sharp pops, thin fractures, spider webbing through the once solid face. When the steam clears and the rock is cool enough to approach, the miners move in with their picks and wedges. As expected, the rock comes away far more easily now, flaking off in sheets. Fire setting is a dramatic technique, but widely used in this era. It's documented in mines from the Harz Mountains to the Tyrol and beyond. Of course, it has drawbacks. The smoke can choke them. They try to ventilate by fanning their arms and waiting, and it consumes precious timber. But here, in a forested region, wood is available, and the ore is valuable enough to justify the cost. They won't do this too often, usually only when the rock is exceptionally tough. Agricola wrote of this method and noted the large consumption of wood and the risk of spalling, flying sharp chips. Our miner is glad the fire setting went smoothly today. Sometimes it can loosen more than intended and cause minor collapses, but this time it was controlled. With the freshly cracked rock now yielding more ore, they make good progress. Their cart fills quickly with broken chunks. One piece gleams with visible metallic streaks, perhaps pure lead or a rich silver-bearing mineral. Such a find would be cause for excitement, but the miner tempers his hopes. By custom and law, he's not entitled to just pocket a nugget if he finds one. Everything must be accounted for and divided according to the mining code. In this region, the lord of the land, or the crown, typically takes a portion, often a tithe or more, of all metal extracted. In some places, for instance in England's lead mines, the system of lot and cope meant the lord got every 13th dish of ore as lot and a fixed fee as cope. Here, similarly, A significant cut will go to the Lord's coffers, and another to the church. The church insists on its 10% tithe of all mineral produce. Only the remainder is sold, and the earnings split among the miners and investors. The miner's wage is not directly tied to exactly what he finds in a day. He is usually paid a daily or weekly wage, sometimes with a small bonus if a particularly rich vein is hit. In other arrangements, miners might be independent tributors who get a share of the ore's value. But in this operation, they are waged labor with some rights to a bonus. So while he's pleased to see good ore, he knows it doesn't instantly make him rich. In fact, he'll be lucky if it slightly improves the meager pay he'll collect at week's end. Let's talk about his pay. Being a miner in medieval times is not a fast track to wealth. Most miners are paid just enough to sustain their families, and often partially in goods or credit rather than coin. For example, our miner's compensation might include a ration of bread or grain, some lamp oil, and perhaps a small sum of pennies. Wages often were a combination of cash and in-kind payments. In years past, he even found himself paid entirely in stale bread and beans when the Lord was short on coin. It wasn't uncommon. Many a week, his ledger with the company ends up zero because he's paid in supplies, timber for fixing his roof, new boots, extra ale that the mine advanced to him. This leads to a kind of indebtedness, a cycle where he owes the mine store for equipment or food and has to work that off. Right now, he's still carrying debt for a set of new chisels he got last winter on credit, hoping a good season would allow him to repay. It hasn't yet. In short, the company's store owns him as much as the mine does. If the ore output is poor, sometimes his family can't even afford meat for months. They live on pottage and black bread. But if it's good, and the Lord is satisfied, maybe each man will get a small extra portion of salted pork or a silver groat at Yuletide as a bonus. The uncertainty of income weighs on him constantly. He tries not to dwell on it while he works. Down here, distraction can be deadly if it causes a misstep, but it never fully leaves his mind. As the hours pass, fatigue deepens. In the close darkness, it's easy to lose track of time. The miners gauge it by their own bodily rhythms and by their lamp fuel. A small tallow lamp will burn perhaps 4 to 5 hours before needing a refill. When our miner notices the flame getting low and the tallow nearly spent, he knows the noon break or end of shift must be approaching. His stomach also tells him he's getting hungry again. The bite earlier was not much. He and his partner have pried out nearly all the accessible ore from this section. What remains is a lot of rubble and some stubborn bits attached to the roof. They decide that's enough for now. It can be tackled fresh another day. They load the final cart with broken rock and trundle it out. Trudging back through the galleries toward the main shaft, our miner becomes aware of how quiet the mine has become. The clanging of tools has subsided in many corridors. Other pairs of miners are also wrapping up work or resting. Reaching the shaft bottom, he sees a small crowd of weary men waiting their turn to climb out or to send up the last loads. There's a subtle shift in mood, a lightening, an unspoken relief that comes with surviving another shift. The flicker of lamps shows faces smeared black with dust, eyes blinking and red-rimmed from smoke, but carrying the spark of tired camaraderie. One by one, they ascend the ladders. Our miner goes last from his team, as the foreman asked him to double-check nothing of value was left behind. Satisfied all ore is accounted for, he begins the climb upward. This is perhaps the hardest part of the day, the long ladder to daylight, with gravity pulling on every exhausted limb. He grips the wooden rungs, slick with slime, and hoists himself steadily. His shoulders burn, and his knees tremble with each step up. Steady, he tells himself. Don't look down, don't rush. The lamp on his belt dangles and bumps against his thigh. About halfway up, he pauses on a little platform to catch his breath. In that moment, he senses the cool, fresh air seeping down from above, sweet with the scent of pine trees and life. It's incredible how different it smells from the stale mine. Up top, the air is crisp, tinged with wood smoke and the promise of evening meals. He fills his lungs and pushes on. At last, the rim of the shaft comes into view above. The rectangle of light grows and brightens. He hears voices, cheerful ones, and the creaking of the windlass turning to raise the last bucket. Reaching the surface, he clambers out and stands upright, stretching his cramped back and blinking in the late afternoon light. Daylight, real golden daylight, floods his vision. After so many hours by dim lamps, even the cloudy sky seems brilliant. He squints, eyes watering slightly as they adjust. The sun is already dipping toward the treetops in the west, indicating that it's late in the day, perhaps not long until sunset. He made it through another shift. Up here, the noises of ordinary life resume. The chirp of birds in the woods, the distant lowing of a cow from the village, the clatter of tools being set aside. The mining yard is bustling with end-of-day activities. A group of women, some of the same who gave out porridge this morning, are washing and sorting pieces of ore on long wooden tables. Their aprons are soaked and stained by the metallic silt from the process. These are the ore washers, often wives and daughters, who work on the surface. They take the rough ore the miners extracted and break, crush, and rinse it to separate the heavier metal-bearing pieces from lighter waste. Even the children help in this task. A few young boys and girls are picking through a pile of rocks, looking for any overlooked bits of ore to toss into the processing troughs. The clanking of their sorting pans and the splash of water form a steady background rhythm. Our miner walks a bit unsteadily toward a bench near the main shed and sits down to clean himself up. He sets down his lamp and tools. His wife is nearby, scrubbing a heap of mud-caked work clothes, including his spare shirt, in a large cauldron over a fire. She catches his eye and gives a little smile of relief, seeing him emerge safely. She won't come fuss over him here at the yard. She has her own work, and it's not the custom to dote in public, but the warmth in her glance speaks volumes. He smiles back, a brief moment of tenderness amid the rough scene. After checking out with the foreman, who marks his name off and grunts something about a good haul today, our miner is officially done. He takes a scoop of water from a barrel and splashes it on his face and hair, scrubbing away the worst of the grime. Rivulets of black run down his neck as the coal and metal dust give way to his skin. There's no luxury of a hot bath, just this quick dousing. He wipes off with a rag. The air is cool on his damp skin, raising goosebumps, but oh, how good it feels to be clean and breathing fresh air. As he gathers his things, he notices a pair of armed guards beginning their evening rounds. The mining site, full of valuable ore and equipment, is guarded 24/7 by men appointed by the Lord. 2 guards in padded jacks and carrying spears walk the perimeter, making sure no one tries to smuggle out ore or sneak in after hours. One is checking the sheds, where refined silver or records might be stored under lock. Another is heading toward the shaft head to lock the wooden cover for the night. Miners have a love-hate feeling for these guards. On one hand, they prevent theft and maintain order, important for safety too. On the other, they are a clear symbol of the Lord's control and mistrust of the workers. As our miner shoulders his tool sack and prepares to depart, a guard at the gate gives him a perfunctory glance. Sometimes they search workers to ensure no rich ore is being taken home illicitly, but today perhaps because the yield is accounted for, and these miners are well-known locals, they wave them through after a brief look. Still, the miner can't help but flush slightly at the implicit suspicion. It is known that stealing ore is one of the gravest offenses. Even a pocketful taken unlawfully can result in brutal punishment. Rumored cases of caught thieves being flogged, branded or banished circulate as cautionary tales. In his own village a few years back, one desperate man tried to hide a nugget of silver under his tongue, thinking to smuggle it out. The overseers discovered it, and he was whipped in front of the assembled miners and expelled from the mine forever. The fear of such consequences keeps most honest. That, and a moral code reinforced by guild oaths, never to steal from the common yield. Our miner would never risk it. His integrity and his family's well-being mean more than a quick gain. The sky is turning soft hues of pink and orange as the sun sets. It will be a cold night. Already a mist is rising from the damp ground of the clearing. The miner's breath fogs as he joins a small exodus of workers heading home along the road. Their figures cut silhouettes against the twilight. Some talk in low voices, relieved and a bit more lively now that they're out. A few peel away in the direction of the tavern, intent on securing a mug of ale to wash the dust from their throats. If coins allow, a weak ale in the evening is a common comfort, but our miner, feeling the ache in his bones and the pull of home, decides to go straight back. He walks with his wife, who finished her washing duties. She carries a basket of freshly rinsed work clothes on her hip, and he carries his tools. They don't speak much at first. Both are tired, and words aren't necessary. The simple fact that they walk together out of the dark hollow of the mine and toward the warm glow of their cottage is comfort enough. As they traverse the forest path, night creatures begin their songs. Crickets chirp in the grass. An owl hoots from an old oak. The miner feels the tightness in his chest easing with each step further from the mine. Though he'll return before dawn tomorrow and do it all again, for now he lets the peace of the evening settle on him. The loneliness he felt deep underground fades in the presence of his wife by his side, the knowledge that soon he'll see his children safe at home, perhaps share a story or prayer with them before bed. He squeezes his wife's hand lightly, a gesture of gratitude and solidarity. She smiles softly in the dusk, understanding. They reach their cottage, a small, rough structure of timber and daub that squats among a few others on the edge of the village. From the lean-to stable comes the soft rustle of their goat and the cluck of a couple of hens settling on the roost. He opens the wooden door and ducks inside after her. The warmth of a low fire caresses his face. The smells of home, wood smoke, cabbage stew, and the familiar slightly sour scent of the damp thatch roof enfold him. In the corner, his children spring up from the blanket they were huddled on. "Papa," cries the littlest, barreling into his legs. He chuckles and swings the toddler up, mindful not to smear too much grime on her clean nightshirt. His older son, about 8, stands shyly, hands behind his back, but the relief in the boy's eyes is clear. Father is home safe. The eldest, his daughter of 12, is already ladling stew from the pot over the fire into wooden bowls for supper, now that mother and father have returned. They all sit together on a rough bench by the hearth. The evening meal is simple: a thin stew of cabbage, onions, and a few bits of carrot, bulked with barley. There's also a loaf of dark rye bread to share. It isn't much, but to the miner it tastes heavenly right now. As they eat, the children excitedly tell of their day, the little one babbling about a butterfly she chased, the son proudly announcing he helped gather firewood and showing a small blister as proof of his labor, the daughter mentioning that the priest stopped by the cottages to remind everyone of the upcoming holy day. The miner nods and smiles, listening. He savors these normal domestic tales. After a day in the sepulchral hush of the mine, the lively chatter of children is like music. The sounds, smells, and textures of home rejuvenate him. The thick smell of the stew, the soft flicker of the hearth's light, casting dancing shadows on the walls, the slightly scratchy feel of his wool cloak around his shoulders, still damp from the mine but warming now. He breaks off a piece of bread. It's hard from sitting out, but he's too hungry to mind and dips it in the broth, chewing slowly as fatigue starts to catch up with him. Supper done, the family observes a small nightly ritual. The miner retrieves a little wooden carving of St. Barbara that sits on a shelf and places it on the table. They light a stub of blessed candle from the church and set it beside the figurine. In a gentle voice, the mother leads them in an evening prayer, thanking God for keeping Father safe this day, asking for protection through the night, remembering any neighbors who are ill or any comrades injured. They specifically invoke St. Barbara, who dwells in light, keep watch over those who work in darkness. The children repeat the words dutifully. The miner closes his eyes, offering silent thanks from the bottom of his heart. The gilded glow of the candle illuminates the rough features of the Barbara carving. She's depicted holding a little tower, symbol of her imprisonment in legend, and a chalice. It is said she is patron of miners because of the legend that as she fled persecution, a rock opened to hide her, the earth itself protecting her faithful. The Miners' Guild has Barbara as their matron saint. In fact, hanging on the wall is the guild oath document, a bit of parchment where he and his fellows swore devotion to her and promised mutual aid and honesty, no theft, no cheating, when the local mine was established. Seeing the candlelight dance on that document and the saint's face, he feels a wave of calm. The loneliness and fears of the day are dispelled, replaced by a sense of belonging to a family, to a community, to a tradition of faith that gives meaning to their struggles. Soon it's time for bed. The children yawn, the youngest already nodding off in mother's lap. The miner strips off his filthy work tunic. His wife will wash it tomorrow and pulls on a cleanish wool shirt for sleeping. They all bundle onto the family pallet, essentially a heap of straw and old linens on the floor by the fire. It's crowded and maybe not the softest of beds, but the shared body heat is welcome on a cold night. The miner lies on his back for a moment, looking up at the rafters. Through a chink, he can see a single bright star twinkling. He reflects briefly on the day. It was a good day as mining days go. No injuries, a decent amount of ore found, a warm meal at home to cap it off. For all its hardships, he takes pride in his work. The silver and lead he helped extract will find its way into coins, into stained glass windows for a cathedral, into fine utensils or weaponry, fueling the economy of the wider world. Miners like him, toiling unseen, make possible the Lord's wealth and the artisan's craft. There's an old saying he once heard a priest remark: if the miners stopped, the world would crumble. It rang true. Iron for plows and weapons, silver for money, salt for preserving food, all come from the bowels of the earth, wrested by miners' hands. It's a quiet honor, though often not acknowledged in grand speeches. He turns on his side, nestling between his wife and son. The warmth and the rhythmic breathing of his loved ones lull him. As he drifts toward sleep, bits of the mine come back to him. The drip, drip of water, the echo of his pick, the moment of panic when his lamp faltered. He feels a familiar anxiety flicker in his mind. Tomorrow will bring those dangers anew. Will his luck hold another day? It's a thought every miner pushes away each night to find rest. He murmurs a final prayer, very softly. Lord, deliver us from the perils of the dark, and bring us to see the light of morning. With that, and the gentle squeeze of his wife's hand on his arm, he lets go. His eyes close. The fatigue envelops him, dragging him quickly into slumber. Our miners' days and nights repeat in this manner, season after season. The years begin to blur, each much like the last, filled with toil and small mercies. He endures, he ages, perhaps he even trains his son to swing a hammer in those same tunnels when the boy comes of age. But nothing in this earthly life lasts forever. In time, whether by the slow march of years or the sudden stroke of misfortune, he leaves the mine, one way or another, Eventually, the lodes thin out. The rich veins that attracted so many become harder to find. The tunnels have chased them as deep and far as practical. The yields fall off, or the water seeping in becomes too troublesome to pump. Perhaps new deposits are discovered in a distant district, luring the younger miners away with hopes of better pay. Perhaps a war or plague strikes the region, as it did in the mid-14th century, decimating the workforce and halting operations for a time. One by one, the roar of the forge, the ring of the pick, the rattle of the ore cart, all fall silent. The mine that was once bustling gradually becomes a ghost. The entrances are shuttered or simply abandoned. The support timbers, no longer tended, start to rot and give way. In some forgotten passages, minor collapses occur with no one to witness them but the silent darkness. The village that grew around the mine also changes. Many families move on, seeking work elsewhere. A few stubborn souls remain and turn to farming the patchy earth or find employment in a nearby lord's manor. Our miner's own cottage might be sold or reclaimed by the lord once he's too old to work. He might end his days living with one of his children in another town, far from the sound of picks on stone. In the woods, nature slowly reclaims the scars of mining. The charcoal burners' clearings sprout new saplings. The once well-trodden path to the pit head becomes overgrown with brambles and weeds. The wooden headframe over the main shaft, battered by seasons of rain and frost, collapses and tumbles into the yawning pit, leaving an unsafe open hole gradually obscured by bushes. Years later, someone passing might not even realize a mine was ever here, save for some odd mounds of earth, the old spoil heaps, and a sunken impression or two, where a tunnel near the surface caved in. Forests regrow in these places, oaks and pines spreading their roots into the once uprooted soil. Birds nest in the quiet thatch of an old hut's remains. The mine bell that used to govern daily life, ringing out the start of a shift, the noon break, the emergency alarm, is long gone, perhaps melted down or taken to a church. In its stead, there is birdsong, the rustle of leaves, the gentle patter of rain on the wild foliage that now covers the site. The names of the miners who once labored there slip from memory. Maybe a local chronicle, kept by a monk, mentions in passing the year when the silver mines of N yielded so many fathers of lead and so many marks of silver, or notes a disaster like a flood or fire. Perhaps in the churchyard, a lichen-covered stone stands engraved with a miner's name and the phrase "killed in the pit," a faint testimony to a life of toil. But with each generation, fewer remain who remember the miners' stories. The ledger books molder away, the guild records collecting dust in some chest may never be read again. The world moves on to new centers of activity, another rich strike in the mountains elsewhere, or new trades like weaving or metalsmithing as towns grow. And yet, in a way, the miners are not entirely forgotten. The wealth they extracted might adorn the local lord's castle or fund the church's new altar candlesticks. The very coins that pass through hands in the market, stamped with the king's profile, may contain trace silver that our miner hewed from the rock. Unseen, the fruit of his labor circulates widely, a silent witness to his contribution to the realm. Centuries later, perhaps a scholar or archaeologist curious about medieval mining might visit this forest. With learned care, they identify the slight depressions and the debris of slag and charcoal, the remnants of huts. They might even clamber down, carefully, with modern ropes and lights, into the old shafts if they haven't completely collapsed. In those depths, untouched for ages, they could find a rusted pickaxe head, or a broken wooden shovel, or even a leather shoe preserved in mud. Each artifact would whisper of the miner's presence. The archaeologists, standing in the dark with electric torches glaring off wet walls, would marvel at the conditions, the low ceiling, the strain visible in the pick marks left on the rock, the soot of ancient fires on the stone. They might shake their heads in admiration and pity for those medieval miners, trying to imagine the courage and endurance it took to work here day after day. In their reports and museum displays, they would honor those nameless workers, explaining how miners in 14th century Europe lived and died, showcasing the humble tools and personal tokens: a cross, a half-burnt candle, a fragment of a woven tunic that survived the centuries. In this way, long after the silence fell on the mine, the miner's story would be pieced together and shared, and their memory given new life. But for now, let's linger a moment in that silence at the end of our miner's day. The sun is set. The village is dark, except for a few hearth fires glowing through hut windows. Inside one of those huts, our miner sleeps soundly, his body spent but at peace, his soft snores joining the nocturnal chorus. Perhaps he dreams, maybe of bright loads of pure silver, or of a quiet life above ground, plowing a field under open skies. Perhaps he doesn't dream at all, lost in the heavy, wordless rest of exhaustion. Around him, the world that once shook with the din of picks and echoing thunder of blasting rock is now at ease. The darkness that he battled all day with flame and faith is now his gentle blanket for sleep. In the morning, before sunrise, that familiar bell or call will rouse him, and he will shoulder his tools and descend once more, repeating the ancient and honorable cycle, entering the earth to earn his bread, then returning to the surface with its treasures. He will do so the next day, and the next, as long as his strength and the mine's bounty hold out. This was the life quietly lived by countless miners across the medieval world, men who swung their hammers in candlelight, who coughed and prayed in equal measure, who went unnoticed by chronicles, even as they underpinned the economy of kings and bishops. It was not a life of glory or ease. It was, as we've seen, often damp, chill, and dangerous, but it had its own rhythms of hope and solidarity. The shared loaf at break time, the communal celebration on a holy day, the comfort of a comrade's joke in the dark, the trust in a patron saint's protection. Now, as our story gently comes to a close, imagine standing once more at the edge of that mine at twilight. The shaft is dim and empty, the tools are set aside, and the last miners have trudged home. A profound hush lies over the clearing. You can almost hear the echo of their footsteps fading down the road. Look down into the shaft. It's just blackness now, perhaps a faint smell of smoke and ore wafting up. From below, there is no sound. All is at rest. You drop a small pebble in, and after a moment, you hear it click on some faraway tunnel floor, a tiny sound that only accentuates the depth of the silence. The mind sleeps, and the earth holds its stories close. Hello, guys. Close your eyes and imagine a world far beneath the surface of the earth. The air around you is cool and still, lit only by the weak glow of a distant lamp. We're about to journey together into that darkness, into the quiet tunnels and secret caverns of the Middle Ages. It's a slow, gentle journey, the kind that you might just fall asleep to as the ancient past softly unfolds around you like a dream. Before we begin in earnest, I want to say, if you find comfort in these quiet journeys through the past, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Also, I'd love for you to share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. It's always so interesting to see how far and wide these quiet moments reach. Thank you, and now let's step back in time. Imagine it's very early morning, long ago. The year doesn't matter. Perhaps it's the late 1300s, maybe a winter sometime around 1450. But the scene is a small mining village, still wrapped in pre-dawn darkness. In a cramped wooden hut on the edge of the village, A lone miner is stirring from sleep. The air inside is cold and damp. There's no chimney, so the smoke from last night's fire hangs in a thin haze near the rafters. Our miner sits up on his straw bedding, careful not to wake his wife and children, who lie nestled under thin blankets beside him. He can see his breath in the faint glow of the banked embers. Quietly, he begins his day, long before the sun has even hinted at the horizon. He fumbles in the dark for his clothes, stiff, heavy work garments that smell of sweat, smoke, and earth. First a coarse linen shirt, then a simple pair of woolen breeches. Over these he pulls a tunic of thick wool, patched at the elbows and shoulders. The tunic was once a dull blue, perhaps, but now it's hard to tell. It's stained gray-brown with layers of ingrained mine dust and grease. He ties it at the waist with a cracked leather belt. From a peg he lifts his cap, a snug coif of padded cloth that covers his head and can be pulled low. It's meant to cushion against stray rocks and to keep the perpetual mine drip from running down his neck. His boots wait by the door, sturdy ankle boots of hardened leather caked with dried mud from yesterday. One of them has a noticeable cut at the top. He had to cut it down from a larger boot when the sole of his old boot gave out, a makeshift repair that many miners are familiar with. The kinds of patched-together boots found at medieval mining sites bear witness to their thrift. The tools of his trade are arranged carefully near the door. He lifts a short-handled iron pickaxe, its head worn and nicked from constant striking of stone. Alongside it, he gathers an iron hammer and a set of steel chisels of various lengths, their edges recently sharpened at the village smithy. These he places in a leather sling that he can carry over his shoulder. There's also a shovel he fashioned himself, essentially a broad wooden blade carved from oak, reinforced at the edge with an old strip of iron. It's lighter than an all-metal shovel and serves well for shoveling loose rock. He grips it in his calloused hand. Lastly, he takes his lamp, a small iron lamp with a hook, fueled with mutton tallow. It's cold now, just a blackened wick. He will light it at the mine. Everything is ready. He pauses by the bed and gently lays a rough woolen kiss on his sleeping wife's forehead. She murmurs and curls tighter around their youngest, a toddler. For a moment, he allows himself the warmth of that domestic scene, the faint sound of his children breathing, the sweet sour smell of their hay mattress, the dim outline of his family in the darkness. It gives him the quiet resolve he needs each day. The reason he goes down into hazard and gloom is right here. With that, our miner pushes open the wooden door and steps out into the pre-dawn world. The village is silent. Thin frost crunches under his boots. Overhead, a sky of endless black is beginning to soften to deep blue in the east, but stars still burn fiercely, pinpoints of cold light. He pulls his wool cloak around him, shivering for a moment. The air is sharply cold, biting his cheeks and nostrils. A few other dark figures are visible, each emerging from their own huts or coming down the lanes, fellow miners starting their trek to the mine. They carry similar sacks of tools, some coughing or stretching stiff limbs as they go. There's a shared weariness in their gait, but also comradeship. One man raises a hand in half wave to our miner, and he returns the gesture silently. No one speaks aloud at this hour. The village still sleeps, and a certain reverence or superstition keeps the miners quiet. Instead, they acknowledge each other with nods. Here and there, a quiet prayer can be heard, one older miner softly moving his lips as he fingers a wooden rosary. It's common among them to say prayers on the way to work, each in his own fashion. Our miner whispers a habitual invocation as he walks. Holy Mary, protect us. Saint Barbara and Saint Anne, pray for us. Saint Barbara, patron saint of miners, is invoked every day without fail. He touches the small leaden medallion of her that hangs on a cord around his neck, Ironically, that metal was cast from metal his mind produced. In the medallion's dim outline, Barbara holds a tower and palm of martyrdom. He adds a plea to her. Keep me safe this day under the earth. Bring me back to see the sun. Then a quick Ave and Pater Noster for good measure. This is part of the daily ritual, as ingrained as swinging his pick. They say without St. Barbara's protection, a miner wouldn't last long. The risks are too great, and only heaven's intercession stands between a miner and sudden death in the dark. Whether that's literally true or not, our miner isn't about to chance it. Faith and ritual help quell the quiet dread that any man must feel descending into the deep. He and a few others converge on the road leading to the mine. It's a dirt path now frozen in ruts and puddles. By mid-spring, it will be a mud slurry. By summer, a powdery track. But in this season, it's iron hard underfoot. The miners walk in a loose line, cloaks wrapped tight, lantern poles in hand, not yet lit. One carries a dim horn lantern to light the group's steps. Others trust the growing dawn. Gradually, dark silhouettes of trees lining the road become discernible. A faint metallic gray appears low in the east. The sun is nearing the horizon, though still hidden behind hills. Their timing is precise. They aim to be at the mine by the time there's just enough light to work by above ground. After half an hour, a clearing opens ahead, the mine site, the outline of a couple of wattle and daub sheds, and the lattice frame of the main windlass appear against the palening sky. The chill in the air seems to intensify here, perhaps a breath issuing from the open wound of the earth. They can see a half-dozen others already gathered by a fire near the mine entrance, stamping their feet and warming their hands. Some are women, wives of miners, who tend the fire and have a cauldron of thin porridge simmering, a simple breakfast concession provided by the mining company to keep the workforce from toiling on empty stomachs. Our miner approaches the group. Yellow firelight dances on weary faces. A few nods greet him. The foreman, a stout man with a ruddy nose, grunts a morning and ticks off names on a wax tablet as each man reports in. The miner receives a wooden tally stick marked with his team's symbol. This he'll return at shift's end to account for himself. Such tallies are an early form of timekeeping and safety check. Any not returned by day's end signals someone hasn't come out of the mine. They all eat quickly, small bowls of barley porridge ladled out, not particularly tasty, a bit burnt at the bottom, but warm and filling enough. A few swig weak beer from leather jacks to wash it down. No one speaks loudly. A hush born of habit and perhaps anxiety covers the gathering. In a corner of his mind, our miner always wonders at this moment, will all of us who are going in also come out tonight? But he pushes that thought aside, focusing instead on donning his equipment. He ties a broad leather belt around his waist. From it hang his pouch of spare lamp fat, a small dagger for emergencies or just cutting ropes, and a few leather strips he can wrap around sore spots or use for tying things. He adjusts the strap of his tool sack across his chest, settling its weight. One of the women comes by with a basket of tallow candles and offers him a couple. He takes one, a spare light source, to supplement his lamp if needed, or to leave in a niche as a vigil light by a dangerous spot. He thanks her quietly. Next, he grabs a handful of spruce twigs from a pile. These are multi-purpose down below, for kindling if fire setting a rock, or for fashioning a quick torch in an emergency. A small shrine stands near the mine entrance, a simple wooden cross nailed to a post with a weather-faded figurine of the Virgin Mary beneath it. Before heading to the shaft, each miner, including our friend, steps to this shrine, bows his head, and perhaps touches the cross or says a final prayer. It's a rendezvous with the divine at the threshold of the underworld. The foreman leads a brief invocation aloud. Saint Barbara, pray for us. Lord, preserve us. A murmur of amen passes through the men. This has been done every shift for as long as anyone remembers. a collective hedge against the unpredictable dangers below. Candles are lit and left at the shrine by the first group going down. They will burn all day as an offering and a remembrance of those lost. There are always names to remember. Now it is time. The sunrise is just gracing the treetops with pale gold, but down in the mine it will still be night. One by one, the miners approach the shaft. It's a gaping black square in the earth, reinforced by a wooden collar. A stout oak windlass stands straddling it, rope wound around the drum. A bucket, large, made of thick hide with wooden bracing, dangles at the shaft mouth, ready to lower tools or sometimes men. Today, as usual, most men will climb down via the footholds and ladders, and the bucket will carry their tools or heavier loads separately. Our miner secures his sack and shovel to the bucket's hook so he can descend unburdened. He'll retrieve them at the bottom. Two strong lads begin easing the windlass, and the rope unspools with a creak, lowering the load into the pit. The lamplight glimmers on the walls briefly as the bundle sinks. Then it's gone, swallowed in darkness. The foreman gives a nod, and the first group of miners steps forward to descend. They use a series of crude ladders and notched logs set against the shaft's side. It's about 150 feet deep. Some mines have multiple levels and spiral down much further, but this is an average depth here. The upper part has a real ladder with rungs made of ash wood. Lower down, it's more primitive. Handholds carved into the rock and a few fixed ropes. One by one, the men climb down. Our miner is near the end of the queue today, not in a rush. When it's his turn, he squats at the edge, feeling with his foot for the first rung. He swings onto the ladder and begins the descent. Almost immediately, he is enveloped by cool, damp air and shadow. Only faint light from above delineates the shaft walls in bluish outline. He carries his lit lamp on a thong around his neck, leaving his hands free. The lamp's tiny flame casts just enough glow for him to see the rung below his foot and to pick out the next handhold. The world shrinks to that circle of flickering light, the slick wooden rung beneath his boot, the rough rock pressing on all sides. Step by step he goes down, muscles straining. On some days, the constant climbing leaves his limbs more exhausted than the mining itself. Halfway down, he pauses on a little ledge to rest. He feels water trickling, a steady drip somewhere nearby. Indeed, parts of the shaft wall glisten with moisture, and here and there thin rivulets run down, making the wood ladder rails slimy. He wipes one hand on his tunic and adjusts his grip. A voice echoes up from below, a miner calling that he's clear of the ladder. Another distant voice above signals that a cart is coming down on the rope. Life in the shaft echoes and flickers as if in some weird dream. Our miner continues downward. The darkness deepens beyond his lamp's reach. Eventually, after what feels like an eternity of careful steps, he senses open space below his feet. The bottom. He steps off the last rung onto solid ground. We're now at the bottom of the shaft, a small chamber cut into the rock to serve as a base. He breathes out, a breath he didn't realize he was holding, and mutters a quick "Dio gratias." Thanks be to God. The chamber is alive with dim activity. Several lamps bob as miners pick up their tools from the bucket delivery. The roof here is propped with heavy oak beams. The smell hits him, a mix of wet stone, smoke, sweat, and an odd tang of sulfur and metal. It's the smell of the mine, unmistakable and all-pervasive, clinging to hair and clothes, never fully washed out by any amount of soap above ground. He retrieves his tool sack and shovel from where the bucket offloaded them. Immediately, he notices something amiss. His pick is missing. A quick scan, and he sees it. Another miner almost took it by accident, mistaking it for his own. They exchange a friendly grunt as the pick is returned. Such mix-ups are common enough. Many tools look alike, and down here in near dark, one must be careful. Our miner wipes a bead of moisture off his lamp, Condensation gathers on metal quickly in this cool humidity. From the shaft base, several tunnels lead away. Each is an opening about 5 feet high, some less, reinforced at the mouth by timber. Above each, crudely painted or carved, is a symbol designating which part of the mine it leads to. The foreman is here too, dividing the men into work teams and directing them to headings. Today, our miner is assigned to the western drift, where a promising extension of the vein is being pursued. He and 2 partners will work at the rock face there. Before heading down the tunnel, he performs one more little ritual. Along the wall at the shaft station, there's a small alcove with a sacred image, a tiny painted icon of Saint Barbara stuck into a wooden frame. A couple of vigil candles from earlier are still burning, their flames steady in this windless environment. He touches the icon gently and mouths Sancta Barbara, Ora pro nobis. It's a touchstone of hope in the gloom, a bright face of a holy woman keeping watch at the portal between the dangerous tunnels and the way out. Many miners do likewise, some kissing their fingers and touching the icon. These gestures seem to lend a bit of courage as they now disperse into the tunnels, leaving behind the relative safety of the shaft base and venturing into narrower, less secure corridors. Our miner ducks into the western drift after his 2 teammates. The tunnel here is roughly hewn, just tall enough that he can walk with head bowed and not scrape the ceiling, though a taller man might have to stoop lower. The walls are jagged and wet. Support beams appear at intervals, some sturdy pine posts with crossbars, others just leftover logs wedged to prop the ceiling where needed. He runs his hand along one as he passes. It's slimy with some moss or mold. Water drips steadily in one spot, forming a puddle they step across. This constant damp is a bane. It softens timbers and rusts tools, and worst, it weakens the rock, making unexpected collapses more likely. They try to mitigate it by digging drainage ditches along tunnel edges leading to a sump, to be bailed out by bucket later, but still, the drips never cease. All miners are accustomed to working with water trickling down their necks and their feet in mud. The team proceeds, lamps held aloft. The darkness ahead is total. Only their tiny flames reveal the immediate path. Slick rock floor strewn with pebbles and piles of ore from previous days. The silence is profound except for their own shuffle and occasional cough. But as they go deeper, other sounds begin. A distant rhythmic clink of metal on stone. Another team already working at a face further in. It's a comforting sign. It means life is in the tunnel, not just silence and potential death. Presently, they reach their designated work site. It's marked by some chalk writing on the wall from yesterday, perhaps numbers indicating depth or a symbol for dig here. The tunnel ends a short way ahead in a wall of rock, the ore face they're chasing. By their lamplight, he can see the vein, a discolored streak running at an angle through the rock, maybe a foot thick. It contains lead and silver ore, argentiferous galena, the prize of their labor. Bits of it shine dully in the lamplight like tarnished glass. Miners often call it black metal, or simply the ore. Surrounding it is hard host rock that must be broken to free the vein. The evidence of previous work is all around, the floor littered with broken stones, a few leftover wedges sticking from cracks, scorch marks where they did fire setting recently, a technique of burning the rock to crack it. They get to work. One miner, the partner who took his pick by mistake earlier, a wiry fellow named Tomas, sets his lamp on a ledge and takes up a hammer and chisel. The other partner, a burly man called Stannis, positions himself to shovel debris when it comes loose. Our miner draws a deep breath, plants his feet, and swings his pick at the rock seam with full force. Thunk, the point strikes a spark and bites into stone. A satisfying chip breaks off. He feels the impact shiver up the handle to his arms. It's heavy labor, but at least the pick is doing its job. He strikes again, Again, rhythmic, steady, chips and dust fly. On one swing, a shard ricochets and nicks his cheek. He grunts, wipes the tiny blood bead away, and continues. Safety as we think of it is minimal here. No goggles or hard hats in this century, just whatever caution and skill a miner accumulates through experience, plus the customary prayers for protection. Tomas wedges his chisel into a crack. Our miner's pick opened. With a few hammer blows, he forces it deeper, splitting the rock further. A crack echoes. A plate of rock about the size of a man's torso shears off from the wall. "Oh, there she goes," Tomas calls, half in warning, half in triumph. The men step back as the slab crashes to the floor with a thud. Immediately, they crouch to examine it. Embedded in that rock are glints of dull bluish-gray metal, the lead-silver ore. Stannis brushes it with his hand and lets out an approving whistle. Good quality stuff by the look, generously dotted through the stone matrix. They haul the chunk aside. Already, water is starting to seep, glistening over the freshly exposed wall. Our miner takes a wooden stake and drives it above the seam where the piece came out, propping a bit of the ceiling, just in case. One can never be too careful. They constantly set temporary props as they gouge out pockets of ore to support what now lacks support. The company provides some pre-cut timbers, but often they use what's at hand. The ceiling here looks stable enough, but it has a spider web of hairline cracks, the kind that might widen later. He exchanges a knowing glance with Stannis. They will recommend the foreman bring a large beam here later. They press on, pick, chisel, hammer, shovel. The sounds of their labor echo down the tunnel, each strike a sharp clang, followed by a ringing that dissipates quickly into the darkness. These rhythmic noises are the heartbeat of the mine. Strangely, a miner gets used to them such that silence can actually be more frightening. Silence might mean something's gone wrong, an accident stopping work, or a collapse stifling all sound. So they prefer the clamor. It means life. As they dig deeper, the team encounters a stubborn section of rock. The ore vein snakes into it, tantalizing, but the host rock here is exceptionally hard, perhaps a knob of flint or quartz. The pick bounces off with barely a scratch. Tomas curses under his breath and flexes his cramping fingers. The old methods will have to come into play. They decide to use fire setting. This is a risky but common technique for particularly hard rock. They clear back tools and flammable items. Our miner and Stannis gather firewood, kept dry in a nook nearby for this purpose, and stack it against the troublesome rock face. They have pine logs, some brush, and scraps of oily rag from their lamp supplies. Once piled, they light it with a spare candle. Whoosh, crackle, the small kindling catches, then the larger wood. Soon a fire blazes in the confined tunnel. Thick smoke begins to curl upward along the ceiling. The men step back, covering their noses with cloth. The temperature soars. For a good half hour, they maintain this fire, feeding it wood, letting the heat soak into the obdurate stone. The rock face turns black with soot. Little popping sounds signal that it's fracturing internally. The air becomes nearly unbreathable despite their attempts to wave the smoke toward a hand-dug vent hole above a small shaft they'd bored earlier to help alleviate smoke. They are sweating rivers. Even the stone floor feels warm now. Finally, they douse the fire. Stannis takes a leather bucket of water kept ready for this and hurls it at the flames. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A burst of steam and smoke billows out, enveloping them in a hot cloud. They retreat, eyes stinging, until it clears. The sudden cooling causes the heated rock to crack, a series of sharp reports like a muffled gunshot as fissures race through the once impenetrable flint. When they cautiously approach again, the formerly stubborn section practically crumbles under the next blow of the pick. They break away the now brittle remnants, revealing fresh ore behind. Success, but the chamber is a mess of char and reek. They will need to vent it thoroughly. Our miner coughs hard, spitting black phlegm. His throat and lungs burn from the smoke inhalation. This is one reason so many miners have short or sickly lives. Each fire setting sears their respiratory system a bit more, but it's part of the job. He takes a swig of ale from a skin at his belt to wash the taste away. Miners often bring weak ale or water down with them. Ale is preferred because the water that seeps in mines can be foul or laced with minerals that cause stomach illness. The tepid ale soothes his throat. While the smoke dissipates, they use a makeshift fan, a canvas on a stick, to waft it toward an overhead crack that connects to an old stove. The team takes a short break. They sit on stones, catching their breath. Far off, they hear other men working, a faint chorus of distant knocks, and an occasional shouted exchange. Here, in their own alcove, they mostly hear each other panting and the drip of water reforming on the now cooled rock. They use this time to eat a little. Our miner pulls a chunk of coarse rye bread and a bit of hard cheese from a pocket, sharing with his mates. They chew in silence, lamps turned low to conserve fuel. The darkness around them feels thick and alive. Each man, in his own thoughts, probably offers a prayer of thanks that the fire setting went without disaster and that a good amount of ore is coming out. For a miner, these quiet moments are rare, perhaps a few minutes at midday if the foreman allows, or an hour at the face of exhaustion when they physically can't continue without rest. In those moments, many miners dwell on memories of daylight, green fields, the sun on their face, the laughter of children. It bolsters their spirits to remember there's a world beyond the endless night of the mine. Break over, they resume their labors. They've accumulated a significant pile of ore chunks now. Stannis takes the wheelbarrow, a simple barrow with one wheel, an invention that's still fairly new in Europe, but absolutely invaluable in these passages, and they load it up with the best pieces. He trundles it back toward the shaft. The path is uneven, so it's slow going. Twice, our miner stops picking to go help Stannis push it over a bump. Eventually, they get the heavy barrow to the shaft station, where another team is already hoisting baskets of ore up. Their load will go up on the next turn. A record keeper at the shaft tallies roughly how many baskets each team sends up. This will factor into wage calculation if there's a bonus system, and also measure the mine's output. During this hauling interlude, our miner hears a distant commotion echoing through a side tunnel. Shouts, and the reverberation of what might be a collapse or blast. Heart pounding, he scans the faces at the shaft. No one here seems panicked. Likely it was an expected blast. Some mines in late Middle Ages started using a little gunpowder for blasting, but it's still very rare and novel. More likely it was just another big fire setting or a minor cave-in. The foreman at the shaft cocks his head listening, then resumes his duty. Our miner silently hopes all is well. A pang of fear settles, and he has to will it away. Every miner knows that death can come without warning. A fall of rock, a suffocating gas pocket, an explosion from fire damp, though fire damp methane is more dreaded in coal mines. In metal mines, it's less common, but not unheard of, especially if there's rotting matter or certain minerals. They try not to think on these things more than necessary, trusting in their patron saints and each other's watchfulness. But when a noise like that ripples through the darkness, each man feels the icy finger of dread down his spine, wondering if some friends down a neighboring tunnel might be injured or worse. Our miners' team is lucky today. Their work progresses steadily, and by mid-shift they've extracted a good amount of ore and waste rock. The foreman even stopped by to inspect their vein and gave a grunt of approval, about as high praise as he ever gives. Encouraged, they push on, even when fatigue sets heavily in their limbs. The muscles of his arms and back burn from hours of swinging and lifting. His hands are blistered anew where old calluses broke. He'll likely have raw sores tonight, but he hardly notices now. He's in that zone of repetitive labor where the body works almost automatically and the mind drifts between concentration on the immediate task and a kind of hazy reverie induced by exhaustion and the flicker of lamplight. In that state, some miners say they see or hear things, the brain playing tricks in the half-light. It's the source of many superstitions. One might see a vague human shape at the corner of vision, just a play of shadow on rock, and think it a knocker or ghost, or hear a whispered voice, really just water through a crack, and attribute it to a fellow miner's spirit. Our miner is educated enough, by experience, to know which sights to ignore, but even he sometimes feels he's not alone when he is. Down here, in the deep of the earth, one's mind can wander strange paths. At long last, the foreman's whistle echoes faintly down the tunnels, the signal for end of shift. A few more whistles relayed man to man ensure it reaches every ear. They worked perhaps 10 or 12 hours. It's hard to mark time in darkness, but the foreman keeps track by a sand hourglass and by the waning of their lamp oil allotments. The shift is over. A gentle excitement stirs the miners, a mix of relief and eagerness to return to light. Not that their labor is done. They'll have to haul themselves and tools out, wash up, perhaps attend a short debrief, but the most dangerous part is past. They made it. Our miner and his mates pack up their tools, pile the last cart with ore and rubble to send up, and make their way toward the shaft. The tunnels that were so isolated all day now converge streams of men toward the main shaft, flickering lights bobbing as teams trudge in from various headings. Despite their exhaustion, there's a subtle liveliness in their step, a quiet joy at heading home. They gather at the shaft station, forming an orderly if impatient queue for the ladder and hoist. As usual, those nearest the front start up first. 2 men operate the windlass continuously now, hauling baskets of ore up and sending the large bucket down for any injured or for heavy tools. Most prefer to climb rather than be lifted. It's faster than waiting for the bucket. Our miner finds himself behind an older man who is moving slower, so his ascent out is slow too, but he doesn't mind. Each rung upward is literally a step toward light, air, family, toward life. When he finally clambers out of the shaft, the late afternoon sun floods his vision with brilliance. He has to squeeze his eyes shut. Even the softened amber glow of evening is blinding after so long by lamp. Cold, fresh breeze licks his sweat-damp face, cooling him rapidly. He gulps it in, real air, scented with pine from the forest. A hint of distant wood smoke from hearths starting up for supper. It feels like a baptism of the world above. He stands aside to make room as more miners emerge. A few have streaks of soot on their faces, fire-setters like him. Others are chalky white from limestone dust, some dripping wet from working in low flooded steps. But nearly all carry on them the marks of their toil in some fashion, and all share that unmistakable grin of freedom as they breathe deeply and chatter quietly with one another. They made it through the day. There is a ritual at the top too. Each miner returns his tally stick to the supervisor, who matches count to make sure none are missing. He marks their names off the ledger. Thankfully today, all are accounted for. No one trapped below, no accidents that prevented a man from returning. If someone were missing, a rescue would immediately be organized if feasible, or at least a solemn head count and prayer if not. But those are grim occasions that no one wants to see. After checkout, many miners go straight to a trough or barrel by the shed to wash up. Our miner joins them. They strip off their outer tunics or shirts, modestly turned aside from the women present, though the women hardly care. They've seen it all, tending injuries or helping bathe their exhausted husbands on countless nights. He pours a bucket of water over his head. The shock of cold almost knocks the wind from him, but oh, it washes the grime and heat off. He scrubs his face, black rivulets falling away to reveal pale skin. A comrade jests that he looks like a drowned rat, and indeed he is dripping from hair to boots. No matter, he feels human again. They dry off with scraps of cloth and don spare jerkins or cloaks. The wives and children of the miners wait a little way off, some with baskets of food or warm cloaks to offer. Our miner's own wife is among them, holding their toddler by the hand and smiling with visible relief when she sees him climbing out hail. The little one breaks free and totters toward him, arms up. Though weary, he scoops the child up and plants a kiss on her dirty blonde hair. She babbles excitedly, perhaps about a cat she saw or something equally trivial, and that sound is like sweetest music to him after the grind of picks and drips all day. His wife reaches them, taking his heavy tool bag to carry as he has the child. It's a simple gesture, but typical. Mining is a family endeavor in its way. The women do what they can to ease the men's burden after the shift, knowing he'll be bone-tired and aching. As they start to walk home, the sun is setting. The sky in the west is a riot of orange and purple, fading to deep blue overhead, where the first stars prick through. The air bites with the promise of night frost. The miner pulls his wife and child close as they walk, the warmth of their bodies comforting his sore muscles. Other miners peel off towards their cottages, some joking with each other now, more relaxed than they've been all day, maybe planning to share a mug of ale at the tavern later if they get permission, and credit. Many drink on credit from the company's store to be deducted later. Our miner's cottage is at the far end of the village. As they pass the little chapel, he sees candlelight through its window and hears the droning voice of Father Jacob finishing vespers. He makes a mental note that tomorrow is St. Barbara's Day Eve. There will likely be a special blessing for the miners. Last year the priest came to the pit head and blessed each man with holy water on that feast, and they had a rare half-day off work to enjoy a communal meal. It's these small mercies that brighten the otherwise long winter of labor. At home, the hearth is already lit. His older children, the 8-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl, have fetched water and stoked the fire under mother's guidance. A pot of hearty stew simmers. Tonight it's cabbage, a few bits of salted pork, and barley. Not luxury fare, but nourishing and warm. He sits heavily on a low stool near the fire, letting the heat soak into his weary bones. The baby clambers into his lap, playing with the loose shoelace of his boot, babbling toddler secrets. His wife ladles out stew for him in a wooden bowl and hands it over. The smell of it, savory and wholesome, makes him realize how hungry he is. Mining burns through calories like a forge through coal. He murmurs a heartfelt grace. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, in which the family joins. Then they eat. The lamplit interior of their cottage is a world away from the mine, smoky but homey, cluttered with simple furnishings. The cradle in the corner, a drying rack of laundry by the fire, the rough wool blankets on their bed. He savors every detail. As he eats, he listens to his children excitedly recount their day. The boy proudly says he helped mend the fence and saw a deer in the woods. The girl informs him that one of the goats is pregnant and due soon. The toddler just babbles nonsense, which the others interpret seriously. She says Kitty scratched her, the older sister explains. He nods and smiles, asking a question here or there, but mostly letting their cheerful chatter wash over him. After dinner, the miner's wife carefully, almost tenderly, wraps his blistered hands with a salve of goose fat and herbs. She does this every night when needed. It stings a bit, but then cools and soothes. She'll likely have to launder his sooty clothes tomorrow, a never-ending task. There's a saying among the village wives, the laundry of a miner is never white, but our souls may be, an acknowledgement of the perpetual stains they deal with. The family then gathers for a brief evening prayer. The father leads an Our Father and a Hail Mary, and they all invoke St. Barbara once more, thanking her for keeping Papa safe today. At the mention of St. Barbara, the toddler perks up and points to a little wood carving of St. Barbara that sits on their mantle. It was a gift carved by an older miner who is also a bit of a folk artist. They light a tiny taper candle before this carving, a nightly devotion. Its warm glow illuminates the exhaustion in the miner's eyes, but also the peace that now resides there. Soon, it's time for well-deserved rest. The miner eases himself onto the straw-filled family bed. His body hums with fatigue. Every muscle has its own ache. His wife curls next to him, the children snug under blankets at their sides. The warmth of them all packed in, and the lingering heat from the hearth create a cocoon of comfort. Outside, a winter wind whistles, and one can hear a distant wolf howl. But inside, it's safe and warm. As he drifts off, he reflects briefly on the day. It was, by all measures, a good day underground, productive and without incident. Not every day is like that. There have been days of terror, the time the shaft flooded waist deep after heavy rain, and they all had to scramble out. The time a minor tremor, maybe just settling rock, panicked everyone mid-shift. The memory of an accident a year ago when a tunnel in the eastern section collapsed and trapped 2 men. He shudders slightly in remembrance, unconsciously holding his wife a bit tighter in his sleep. Those 2 men didn't make it, and he knew one of them well. The village held a mass for the dead, and the priest said, "They who delve in darkness are seen in the light of God." He hopes that's true, that their toil and sacrifices are not in vain, that some divine justice accounts for all the hardship and risk they endure to bring forth the metals that make the world above turn. His eyelids grow heavy. The last thing he sees before sleep claims him is the little candle by St. Barbara's carving, still flickering. And in that gentle light he imagines perhaps a reassuring smile on the saint's face, as if blessing him with sweet dreams and the promise of tomorrow's dawn. All these facets are woven together to present an immersive picture of why it quietly sucked to be a medieval miner, while also highlighting the resilience and faith that sustained them. Good night. Sleep well, my friend.